Welcome to the Property Couch, where each week you get to listen to two of Australia's leading property experts. Bryce Holdaway, co-host of Location Australia on Foxtel's Lifestyle Channel, and Ben Kingsley, Chair of Property Investment Professionals of Australia, and the 2014 and 2015 Property Investment Advisor of the Year.
All right, folks, you're on the Property Couch, where each week Ben and I bring you the insider's guide to property investing. Hello, mate.
G'day, mate. I think next year I should try an intro.
Mate, I would love for you to intro.
Yeah, well, we've actually had a go at it, have we? Or
yeah,
not?
It was about episode 7. You haven't heard that, have a listen.
No.
Well, how would you do an intro? Come on, give us one.
Hello, everyone. This is Ben Kingsley and Bryce Holdaway, and you're listening to the Property Couch. Is this mic working?
Yes. Well, mate, that's very good.
All right, what are we doing?
We may work on that approach, but mate, we're
stick to property
we're
research.
an encouraging show here, Ben. We're all about encouraging. So yeah, we're going to do Q&A today. We love Q&A.
We do.
Driving into the office this morning, thought Q&A day. How good is it? I obviously love Q&A day too, don't you?
I tell you, she's looking good after a little bout of the flu.
Oh,
yeah.
Luckily, she didn't give it to me. That was going to be a career-ending move. Actually, I just can't have any career-ending moves on this podcast.
No,
then it'll be up to you and me.
Those are all, she can't go anywhere.
What she likes.
She'll never ever be able to resign. Doesn't exist.
We're getting the move on.
All right, she's wrapping us up. The producer's telling us to talk.
Hayden Tate has sent us in an email, right?
All right.
And there's a question at the end, but it's actually it's the definition of property persistence, I've got to say, and it'll make sense once we go through this. To the Property Couch.
Love it.
I'm currently 25 years old. I began my investment journey when I was 17, when my father suggested to use the money I'd saved for a car to instead buy a house. How good advice is that?
Round of applause.
We've gone from bad debt to productive debt.
Oh, brilliant.
Beautiful. This was in 2008 when the Rudd government was handing out the huge first homeowners grants, when I had my first meeting with a mortgage broker. In brackets, I didn't even know what a group certificate was. They were suggesting I buy an off-the-plan unit. So I put in an offer for this unit in Frankston, Victoria, from a company, and this purchase eventually fell through due to the bank valuation not coming through at the correct price.
Lucky that if he signed a contract,
that he
could have lost. Most of them are losing their deposits. So obviously he's
clearly subject to finance.
Dodged a bullet there.
So there's a bullet.
Maybe dodged a bullet there.
Yeah, you
most
bet.
People get caught. Yep.
But there's some key insights there. The bank valuation didn't come in at contract price.
Not unusual.
Never seen that before.
Mm-hmm.
Then I signed up for an off-the-plan unit in Langwarrin. After 2 years, they had not begun construction because the council was saying there was endangered fish in the creek nearby.
I want to know what that fish was.
Yeah, wow.
Just a little tadpole moving into a frog. No, little fish.
That's unusual, isn't it? Yeah. All right, so endangered fish. So I pulled out of that one and tried to purchase one in Carrum Downs 6 months later. And lo and behold, this one fell through because the bank wanted 20% of the loan.
Because they weren't happy about the security and the risk rating. So that's why they asked for a little bit more.
20% because clearly wanted a bit of...
Banks don't lose.
Mortgage insurance. The house never loses. I learned that when I worked at the casino, Ben. The house never loses.
Never loses.
Friends and family were telling me to give up by this point because of how upset I was getting. But I stuck with it and purchased one in Langwarrin. 2-bed, 1 bath. This then turned out to be very poorly built unit. And eventually I received an insurance claim of $20,000 to fix the poorly built unit. So another challenge you have when you build properties, you take all the risk. Mm-hmm. So which is why established is good.
But good news that he had an insurance policy. Obviously called in on the builder who did a dud job. And then effectively not necessarily out of his own pocket, but that's a good defence. So make sure you understand what's going on.
Well, he could have been out of pocket while they were fixing it, no rent. But this
good.
Property after 4 years has not delivered any growth at all. And doesn't look to in the near future either.
Poor bugger.
I know. Hayden, I love that you're being so transparent here. Then I purchased a 1-bed, 1 study, 1 bath unit in a high-rise in Ipswich, Queensland. This property has, here we go, here's the list, a lift, tick, a pool, a spa, a sauna, underground car park, and a concierge.
I think I stayed in that building when I was doing my real estate agent licence up in Queensland.
Yeah? Did you get help from the concierge?
It was empty, basically.
Even though I have made nearly every mistake you could possibly make and still haven't made a cent off property, I'm still obsessed with it and read and listen to every book and podcast and attend any event I can. Brilliant.
Good.
I want to work in the industry to try and prevent this from happening to someone else, but I'm not sure exactly what I want to do. So I was wondering if you could share some insights into mortgage broking and being a buyer's agent. I want as much detail as you can. What's the pros and cons? How do they get paid? And your thoughts on mortgage franchises, or are you better off starting on your own? Good on you, Hayden.
Yeah, let's chat.
Yeah.
All right, so for me, there's a couple of things in there.
Couple.
Congratulations on trying to embark on an education journey about reading books, listening to podcasts. The thing I suppose here, though, is sorting the wheat out from the chaff in terms of what it is that is going to resonate with common sense. So whenever I went to the Spruikers, the Henry Kays of this world, and I went to all of them in my early 20s, and I'm now 45, so, right back to all of the big Spruikers of the day, and there were some takeaways. I did actually learn a few things.
Heaps.
But there was, more often than not, there was lots of generalisation, and there was lots of stuff that when you pressure tested it, just didn't quite, make sense. So I always say when I hear a great speaker, it all makes sense to me. Like, I'm observing the world, I'm observing the marketplace, and that makes sense. Oh, that's a sensible approach. So if I took all of those pieces out, that's the stuff that build up my foundations of knowledge, and that's what I've been working with and been fortunate enough to build on, to build, the portfolio that Jane and I have built.
So you got to look for COI. You normally going for ROI, but we've got to look for COI.
I'll go with it.
Conflict of interest.
Yes.
Conflict of interest. So there's nothing wrong with going to seminars. There's nothing wrong with it.
No.
You go and listen, take as much as you can, but avoid the conflict of interest where the person providing the info also provides the product list solution.
Yep. So. I agree. Now let's talk about jobs.
Yep.
Sounds like you want to know a little bit about how it works.
Buyer's agents, I'll start. I'll kick it off.
Yep.
Love what I do. I'm out looking at real estate. I remember one of our team here when she first started with us. Shall I name her? Linda?
Yeah.
She was. She loved the fact that she was sitting there looking at real estate all day, because in her previous job she had to do it on the side and hope that the boss didn't catch her. Now all of a sudden, for a living,
she's getting paid to look at real estate.
She looks at real estate all day, every day. So there's so many pros to being a buyer's agent. You meet people, you're out and about, you get to change people's lives. The only con I could really think of is you need to be comfortable with the uncertainty that comes from having an income based on success.
Yep.
Which means that if you deliver great client outcomes, it means that you get to take home some money.
Yep.
If you don't deliver outcomes, you don't.
Yep.
And so if you're the type of person who just really loves the security of knowing what you're going to get, security for paychecks, probably not for you. If you don't like meeting new people and opening new relationships, and I guess we've talked about a buyer's agent being an obstetrician. So whenever the baby needs to be delivered, you've got to be there no matter what the time is.
Yep.
So like a real estate agent who's putting a deal together at 10 o'clock at night, sometimes
Correct.
a buyer's agent as well.
Oh yeah, well they're on the other side of it, aren't they?
Yep.
Yeah.
And they give up their Saturdays.
Yep.
So, but for me, the rewards are enormous. That I like the flexibility, and I've been self-employed now for 18 years, so I understand the fluctuations that come.
Yeah.
But I can't think of too many pros over and above that.
Yeah.
Too many cons. Over and above that.
No. Look, if you're doing something that you're passionate about, you're playing with people's lives, just like the mortgage guy is, in a sense. They're helping. A great mortgage broker is not only an investment savvy mortgage broker, but they're also taking a real interest in cash flows. So they're not trying to sell you a product. They're trying to offer you a solution that's going to get you over the line in terms of not only today, but also for your future planning as well. I think it can be highly rewarding. You're a little bit more office bound than what you are as the BA. And if I could also wear my property investment advisor's hat, that's when you're sort of bringing the knowledge around cash flow management and also the knowledge around property, because they're, from some buyers' agents' point of view, I don't think they've got the grassroots knowledge of investing. They might understand how bricks and mortar works, but they mightn't necessarily know the formula that drives value. They just know their patch, and they can be a subject matter expert on two suburbs, but doesn't necessarily mean that that's the best investment opportunity. So, from that point of view, so mortgage brokers, normally it's after hours. So they're normally working, whereas a doctor or a professional, sometimes it's okay because the husband or the wife can take a couple of hours off, but getting both parties to the table during working hours is a little bit more challenging. And so when you see that sort of thing happening, you normally have to work a couple of nights a week. As you get better at it and you have a real skill at what you're doing, you can potentially bring the people in during the day, but you're more than likely going to be working a couple of hours, nights a week, I should say.
Tom Panos says it best. He says, when you're in this space, you've got two jobs. One is the technical side of what you do, and the other job is finding people to do the technical side of what you do for. Yeah. And a lot of people forget about that. If you put a shingle out the front, you've got to be able to try and attract people who you can do your service to.
Yep.
So you may be a great technician at your craft, but if you're not great at networking or you're not great at opening relationships to get clients, that's where it falls down.
Yeah, look, finding new opportunities, you're absolutely right. Salary ranges, look, they can start from entry level at around 60,000, and in some cases, buyers agents, some start on retainers. So they have to then get paid, obviously, based on the service fees that they're generating, right through to, some of the best of breed, they make hundreds of thousands of dollars. Yeah,
elite seven figures.
Elite seven figures. So that's over $1 million. Some of these, top 1-2% across the nation can get. So it obviously can be very rewarding, but at that sort of level, you are totally married to the job. You are available 24/7. So if you're looking for work-life balance, usually there are challenges around working in this space because of the time you get to see the clients.
Yeah, so there you have it, Hayden. If anyone is interested in being a buyer's agent, reach out to us, because we are always interested in talking to people who are passionate about helping other people. And if you are passionate about helping other people and you've got some form of exposure to real estate in the past, we'd love to have a chat to you.
Well, he's got a great story to tell too about how some of the mistakes he's made.
Yep.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Certainly worth sharing, and you've allowed us to share that with everyone else, so good on you.
Well, most people want to hear the woe to win story, don't they?
Yeah.
Because no one wants to get up there and hear the bloke how he got his Ferrari. They want to know how he struggled. You want to know how he got 11 properties as a pizza delivery boy.
Yeah.
They want to know that story so they can easily relate to it, because 73% of the population actually only ever buy one investment property.
Yep, makes sense. All right, next one. I got one for you. Brad Smith, I realise you guys are biased towards investing in established homes, usually with a short disclaimer on how you yourselves have invested in new developments at some stage in your lives. In the interest of a more balanced argument, I feel it would be beneficial to offer someone in the industry who focuses on investing in new developments the chance to put their views forward. Just as there are good and bad established homes, the same rings true for off-the-plan developments. What are your views on that one, mate?
Yeah, there's a fair point. I mean, I guess if you listen to our podcast, we'd put a blanket that 100% of off-the-plan is no good.
Yeah.
I'll probably still stand by the fact that the very vast majority don't make for an investment grade asset, because as an investor, it's about the numbers, and I don't really want to provide a concierge, a pool, a lift, a sauna, all that sort of stuff for the tenant. I don't. It's a bricks and mortar bank account.
Yep.
And you've got to put a bit of emotion into the decision when you buy, because you want to make sure you get owner-occupier appeal, the bricks and mortar, but you don't want to put emotion into the actual decision to buy and the deal that you're putting up. So for me, I've told the story. My first investment property, I was paying for a lift in a building that my tenants didn't get to use the lift from. So that was a dud mistake. It had a pool that, because there was, let me think this through, I think there would have been somewhere between 80 and 100 in the block. They didn't have that feeling of exclusivity that comes when you want to go and read your book by the pool in your bikini or your boardies. So not a lot of people used it. And then because it was so large, the forever the tenants' cars were getting broken into. I mean, that's a generalisation, but ultimately people value privacy. They value exclusivity, they value scarcity. And for the developer to actually turn a profit for the risk that they're about to undertake, they want to jam as many in as they can. And for an investor, you want to buy in as few as possible as you can. So for me, we're just at mixed purposes. But I'd agree, if you find an investment grade suburb, you can still find off the plans if they're small and boutique. But my observation is, in the investment grade suburb, there are established suburbs that have been around for a long time. So the sites that they can get are on major roads or old petrol stations or whatever.
Yep.
Versus the stuff that we like to buy as a business is the 70s stuff. Rewind 40 years ago, we could buy them in the quiet little cul-de-sacs or the nice little maybe secondary streets. And so they're in better positions and they've got a beautiful stately home either side. So I think it's a reasonable point. But I would stand by, as a general rule for first-time investors, I would still steer clear of that type of product.
Well, my bias is towards an outperform result. I actually have a bias towards getting the best return I can for my investment. Now, if that leads me to looking at what I'm investing in, and in this case it's bricks and mortar, then and I've done the back testing on literally millions of properties, and I know that these properties on average get an outperform result compared to, say, buying off the plan or house and land package in those areas. That is the message. And so I stand by that message. I don't stand by a bias. If people come and see me for a consult, it's very clear that they've got a bias towards investing in property and in residential property predominantly. So we're having that conversation around, are we diversifying here or no? I understand it. It's tangible for me. There's less volatility in it. I understand the scarcity of it in terms of its essential need, its shelter. So I want to put my money into investing in property. All right. Do we want to get a general result or do we want to get an outperform result? Ask that to anyone. Of course, I want to get an outperform result. So my view is, Brad, you're right. I do have a bias, and my bias is based on statistics and references to the facts. So I'm happy to say that I have that bias for the outperform result. And I'll back up what Bryce just said a moment ago. Does that mean that every off-the-plan purchase and every medium and high-density property in Australia is a dud? Absolutely not. There are some unbelievably amazing opportunities in certain pockets, uninterrupted views. I think I've referred to the Toaster before, looking out over the Sydney Harbour, looking at the bridge, looking at the Opera House. Those properties have performed incredibly well, effectively on the fringe of the city, amazing outlooks, all of that type of thing. So there are always exceptions to the rule, and if you can identify those exceptions to the rule, back test how the performance of that property's gone rather than taking a stab in the dark on anything new, because we know statistically also that between 25 and 50% of most off-the-plan purchases come in under value. So that's telling us something. So we're, I don't want to shoot it down completely because there are amazing opportunities in that space. But when we're listening and educating property investors, we just need them to go in eyes wide open. And our eyes wide open is that our data tells us that they don't perform as well as owner-occupier appeal properties, high scarcity, high amenity, all of those things, convenience, the practical reasons why we buy it, and we get on the coattails of the emotional buyer.
Very good, Ben. We do have a strong bias. That's unmistakable, and we don't apologise for that. But that's a very good point there, Brad. But I would say if you really like a development, I said it a couple of podcasts ago, don't necessarily be the off-the-plan purchaser. Be the second and subsequent purchaser. Because the biggest risk anyone takes, I've been involved in off-the-plan transactions as an advisor in my early part of my career, where clients paid a deposit, waited a long period of time for the properties to be built, and then the developer exercised the sunset clause because they could get more money if they sold it later. So you take on the extra risk so they can get the finance, but you don't necessarily guarantee it's locked in, and vice versa if the developer is struggling and they cut corners, and then you need to be the person that goes back and gets the defects done.
Some awesome advice there, mate. Awesome advice.
Very good. Thank you, Damien Hanley. I love the podcast, learning so much each episode. Feel like I'm completing a degree for free. So thank you so much. I recently purchased my first property under market value. Purchase price $420. My bank's value was $540.
Oh, okay. Well, tell us how you've done that.
Yeah. 3-bed townhouse on 452 square metres in Kenmore in Brisbane. I used LMI, Lender's Mortgage Insurance, of $18,000 due to only 5% deposit, which basically brought my loan up to $420, which was his purchase price.
Yep.
I want to continue to accumulate good properties. My financial decisions, i.e. lifestyle, was poor in the past, but over the last year I've turned that on its head, hopefully using money smarts. I have $20,000 in cash now, and I'm wondering what would be your advice for my next move. I'm making sacrifices to get ahead. I live in the townhouse with 2 tenants, getting $360 a week for cash flow. I have interest in renos also, and I'm looking in the Ipswich area. Should I hold off or move again swiftly. Thanks for your help. Go the Lions.
Go the Lions.
Damien.
So, first thing, this is all going to come down to two things: cash flow and borrowing power. Like at the end of the day, they are the things that stop us from making the next move. When is the best time to buy an investment property? When you can afford it, short, medium, longer term. Okay, so I always encourage people to act sooner rather than later. Don't put it off. There are ways in which we can structure cash flows to allow us to do that. Going interest only on home loans. We've talked about that before in previous podcasts, so check those out. Start from podcast 1 and you can learn more about how you do that. The other things that you also want to be focusing in on is why Ipswich? Is it the right time for Ipswich now in terms of it's done quite well? I can't even say the name of the suburb.
Sorry, mate.
The reality is there's potentially opportunities there, but there's also opportunities in some of the bigger areas and maybe some of the coastal communities along the southeast Queensland corridor. So for me, congratulations. How you get that undervalued price, it's interesting when we talk about how banks might val up some properties. We do know that banks are getting more and more access to data sources that give automated valuations. So those automated valuations, you can put the address in as a broker, you put the address in and it basically spits up a price. In some cases, you put the price in and they say it's okay. So what do you think the brokers do? They put the price in until it says it's not okay anymore. So all of a sudden, that might be the broker or the advisor telling you, we've got this under market value. Now, my question with that is how do we know? Has it been tested in the open market? Because if it was tested in the open market, wouldn't the price you pay represent its market value in terms of versus its fair value? So what the automated system's telling us is that the price range or the value sits there and the bank's valued it at that. But in a technical sense, I would question whether an independent valuer has gone out to that property. If the independent valuer has gone out to the property, still what you sometimes see is that the banks will still accept the lower of the two. Okay, because ultimately, as you said, Bryce, in the past, the house never loses. So they'll always take the more conservative approach. But congratulations on finding a great opportunity. Sounds like you have, and if the market does turn around, that property is going to be worth significantly more, and you should get an outperform result.
Well said. Pick up on a point that you said before. One of the messages to the listeners is never rely on those automated valuations on their own, because they essentially you'd put valuers out of a job if you could. But I always say that no two properties are ever the same. They're like fingerprints.
Yep. And
even myself, we do auto vals as a starting point for a property. But where those auto vals come and where the property ends up is often poles apart. So they sound sexy, and that you can just go on your iPhone app and bang, that's how much it's worth. But it is fraught with danger.
Well, there's an ad out there at the moment. Won't mention the bank, but the buyers are talking to the agent. The agent's being a bit coy about where the price range is, and they've got their little app and they show the price range, and they go about that range. It's like, isn't that fascinating? Because I've seen some appalling automated valuation results on those systems. Like, there is no way known it's worth that little amount, and there's no way known it's worth that much. And I suppose that comes down to subject matter experts. This is a computer algorithm that doesn't have the interpretation or the skill of someone who then does a true comp setup, where they basically look at comparing apples with apples and have better data than what even those computers that are working on these algorithms do. So it's a nice little early filter in terms of getting it. Okay, sits within our budget, sits within our price range, but that would be where I stop, and then I would be comparing land size, I'd be comparing quality, I'd be comparing brick against brick, not brick against weatherboard, I'd be comparing aspect, I'd be comparing floor plan, I'd be comparing location, streetscape, neighbourhood, all of those little nuances make a real difference. Computer can't see that. So, those, they will get better over time as they learn more things, but they don't even look at images. No. Like, these algorithms don't look at the internal images of the properties. So the reality is they're not, they're a early filter, but you can also get very frustrated when people go, oh, well, this I've pointed my phone at this thing and it tells me worth X, and then I go to the auction and it goes for $120,000 more, and we go, we knew that, That's why we didn't go for it. And you're sitting there getting frustrated.
Slaughtered.
So you're getting frustrated with the agent telling you that it's not worth that for the underquoting, but you're also potentially going to get frustrated by some of these apps.
I do get jealous when I watch those American shows where they can price their comps on price per square metre, like New York, for example. It's easier.
Yeah.
But there's no price. The price per square metre doesn't. So
ultimately,
I've never used a computer-generated valuation ever as a reason. So a couple of things here, Damien. Quite often we get the question, not only from listeners, but when we're talking to clients, when should I buy my next one? And the reason they're saying that is because they're not crystal clear on their cash flows, to pick up on a point that you mentioned.
Yep.
So once you get that clarity around your cash flow, then you know, and I'm not talking about just basic budget for 12 months, maternity leave, when I'm having a child, my kids are going to private schools or versus all, as you like to say, Ben, all the big rocks in the jar.
Yep.
Once you've actually forward projected those and then strategically planned when you're going to buy a property, you said cash flows and borrowing capacity, that's... You'd see it 100 times. You just see the light bulb moment in the client's mind, because in the absence of that, it's mystery, and it's like a yacht without a rudder. You're susceptible to whatever anyone says or what anyone feels or the latest fad.
Yeah.
So time and time again, these questions come up. But to be crystal clear on when you should buy your next property is very straightforward. When your cash flow says you can.
Yep. Because your cash flow is going to tell you what your borrowing power is, and away you go. So. I think he was referring a bit to deposits there as well. And so,
So much is your borrowing capacity?
Yeah, which is, I don't mind the deposit either. I mean, low deposits if you're a bit more aggressive in your risk profile, where you do borrow lender's mortgage insurance. All of those things do make sense. There is an argument for some people where they'll save up a bigger deposit to get a more scarcer asset in a better location. And that's playing the long game. Or there's people who are sitting there going, I just want to get my next step on the ladder, next step on the ladder, next step on the ladder. Those people are going to have between 7 and 20 properties. The ones who maybe play the slower game, who potentially look for those better assets without having to buy, sell, and flip and do all of those things, might wait a little bit longer. And that'll come out in terms of you being honest with yourself around what your plans are.
Here.
My turn?
Yep.
Hey, this one's from Ben. Hi guys, love the podcast. I stumbled across your podcast when I was searching for investor information and enjoyed it so much that I went back to the beginning and listened to every single one in a space of about 3 weeks. Nice. Thank you, Ben. I'm 21 years old and working part-time and also studying. I'm planning and on track to have a 20% deposit for a $400,000 house saved up in the next 12 months. Good on you. However, due to the nature of my work, in brackets personal trainer, my weekly pay can dramatically vary, whereas between $300 and $900 per week, with an average yearly earnings of between around $25,000. And the fact that I'm still studying and unable to work full time to increase cash flow for the next few years, I envisage that I would have to wait or no chance of being successful in getting a loan to match my circumstances and my end goal, i.e. early retirement on $100,000 a year. Sounds like a good name for a book. So what's that book called? Armchair Guide to Property Investing. How to retire on $2,000 a week. Small plug.
Yeah, but that means $104,000.
Sorry, Ben, you have to adjust it by basically another $4,000 a year. Very good. Is there anything that I can do to get in the market sooner rather than later without substantially increasing my cash flow? Or should I just keep saving? Cheers and keep up the great work.
Well, I think we need to rewind about 2.5 minutes because it really comes back down to cash flow. Because all things being equal, we chase a capital growth property, but in the ambiguity of income scenario, plus the study, plus the not so sure, the first step on the ladder might be an income property to help subsidise some of those cash flows. So I think it really just comes down to I applaud that at 21 he's starting early and there's plenty of time on his side. So with that in mind, you may just want to, because if he's putting himself under enormous pressure, as you know, Ben, the quality of life's pretty ordinary. So you don't want to have a white knuckle ride. So I would suggest at face value with what we know, without knowing what the next 5 years and the big rocks in his jar look like, I'd suggest that you could, but don't stretch yourself too far. Find the medium between whether it's clearly a growth asset or whether it's a balanced asset or whether it's an income asset.
So I was coming back from the city from a meeting that I had in town yesterday. And I was driving with a cabbie, right? And the cabbie says to me, what do you do? I said, I do property and finance. And he goes, I've got an unencumbered home and the bank won't even lend me 30 or 40 grand to renovate it. I'm thinking, that's interesting. I said, tell me about your circumstances. And he goes, I've got 3 children, 2 in university and the other one still in high school, and I've got a wife. And I say, oh, well, if I've got a pry, I've got to understand what's going on here, because 30 or 40 grand is not a lot.
Good, yeah.
That's all right. I says, what does your wife do? No, she's home mother, so she's a dependent. So all of a sudden I've got 4 dependents. And what sort of income do you earn? Oh, you mean what I tell everyone? I'm like, all right, well, we'll skip past the cash in hand you take. And so I declare about $28,000 a year.
All right.
I'm like, so let's think about this and come back to Ben as well. All right. The story here is the bank wants to lend you money subject to you being able to repay it. Now, how they do that is they look at what the average person is going to be able to afford in terms of living costs. So they ask all those questions about, do you have any other dependents? Where are you living? If you're living at home, Ben, it sounds like you are, because you're being able to save really well, and that's fantastic. But if you think about it logically, the bank is not going to lend $320,000 to somebody who's on 20 grand a year. So you need to have a PAYG income that's equivalent, or, because self-employed's a little bit harder. And, I remember the stats, I'm just trying to think about them now, but it was something along the lines of, almost 80% of small businesses fail. And so the banks, the banks are effectively saying, that's why we're scared to lend to you, because this is a 25 or 30-year loan term. And if you don't have the income, then the loan could go bad. And if the loan goes bad, we're in jeopardy of losing our money. So that's the logical part about this. It comes back to sort of saying, if you can demonstrate to the bank that you can afford it, then the bank will lend you the money. They're not sitting there going, ha ha ha, we have all the control. That's how they make their money. So that's the big thing. So this cab driver comes and says, but in the past, before the GFC, I'd just use my taxi plates, or I'd use my home, and people would just lend against the asset. So, they were called asset loans.
Ninjas.
No job, no assets. So the reality is that's the lay of the land. And that's the way it should be, because we don't want another financial crisis. So from your point of view, Ben, keep saving, mate. And the moment you do get into regular employment where you've got stability of that income, because yes, we can get you a property where it's going to cost you less because there's going to be depreciation and there's going to be higher yields. But the reality is that you've still got to satisfy the bank's lending criteria, and that's your biggest challenge. And that's why income is critical. Not just having the deposit, not just having security behind you, but income is critical.
The 3 C's of lending, Ben: capacity, collateral, character. So your capacity is your income, your collateral is how much equity you got, and then your character is, are you a good credit risk? Very good. Hey, one thing for the listeners too: your accountant is often at pole opposites. Going on from another point that you said, Ben, your accountant is opposite pole opposites to wealth creation. Because an accountant's job, particularly for self-employed, is how much can we make sure you don't pay in tax and declare the lowest income. But the bank doesn't like that. Was he Joe the cabbie?
Yeah. Always Joe the cabbie.
Yeah. So as Joe the cabbie found out, he's declared as minimal possible as he can, and he's having lending issues.
A couple of weeks ago, we had a couple coming in, two brothers running a business quite successfully, almost running itself, a really effective and legal minimisation around how they pay their tax, but not taking incomes, retaining profits and paying off loans. I'm saying, well, that's great and that's good for a tax deduction, but the bank wants to see income. Now, the reality is there was income coming through, but they had these debts they were paying off quickly. So if we turn that into income, all of a sudden there's potential to borrow hundreds of thousands of dollars. So it's the opportunity cost of that money that they're looking to do. So we're having a chat with them about how we say, okay, done a great job, Mr. Accountant, but we've got a future here about wealth building and we need income to build that wealth. So pay the tax and we're on our way.
Very good. I like what you say, mate. I like what you say. So, Ben, we always have this optimism that we're going to smack through all these questions. And here we are. What are we at? Number 5. So we'll try and sneak one more in. Let's try and sneak one more in. This is from Stephen, our Facebook message. Would you be better to build in an area with established housing nearing the end of its development life, where you know the quality of the area, or in a new development with no housing as yet, but a big blueprint for long-term development? Would you get a bigger capital gain in the new area over time, versus potentially small capital gain in established as the capital gain has already expired?
What's your name? Sorry, Stephen. Stephen, have you got a fast train going straight to that new location? If you've got a fast train going to that new location, then the reality is that it may outperform. But the stats and the history will tell us that it's not going to perform. So the reality is established area, we talk about land scarcity, we talked about fully utilised land, and when we talk about that, we know what we're going to get. And the proven resale, because it's usually closer to the central business district or the knowledge centre where we earn our bigger incomes. So from that point of view, that's exactly what we look for.
Yep, agreed. So I guess it's, I think, we mentioned a couple of podcasts ago, you just overlay all of the principles of owner-occupier appeals, scarcity and investment grade over where you are. So this question is more about, the established seems old and unfresh, and the new seems fresh and exciting. Stick to plain and boring.
Sold the bling.
Stick to plain and boring.
Sold the vision. Oh yeah, there's going to be a beautiful new community. There's going to be all this al fresco dining. All of that type of stuff is all going to be in there. Yep. But the reality is that's going to take years, and ultimately some of these developers go broke, and then so the areas don't get no scarcity. Yep. Just oversupply of land always does it.
Investing versus speculating, Ben.
Correct.
So let's make sure. The first one would be investing. The second one would be speculating. So if you like speculating, go and put it on red or black, because that's speculation. But otherwise, stick to boring, true and tested. So, hey mate, that's it. We've quickly got through 5 questions. Thanks to our listeners for sending those through. We always love them. Feel free to send them through to us. Go to thepropertycouch.com.au. Feel free to leave us a review on iTunes. I think we are very close, if not hit 200 5-star reviews, which is just amazing. Folks, I know it sounds a little bit narcissistic, but if you're on a train, if you're somewhere where you're sitting listening to this podcast, if you wouldn't mind just flicking over to the iTunes or Android store and just give us a 5-star review, that'd be great. The reason we ask for that is it just keeps us up in the chart so more people can hear about us. So that'll be helpful. Did I tell you on the podcast that I was over near your place on the Maribyrnong River there, and I was walking with the 2 kids. My wife had gone away for the weekend, and I got the kids on the bike. And did I tell you this? And we're, I think I might have told I was. And I'm going up the street, and I'm in young kid mode, forgetting where I am. Some bloke runs up to me, he might be listening now, and he pulls one headphone off, and he just looks at me and he goes, "Mate, I'm just listening to the Property Couch now as I'm on my run." Puts his headphone on and keeps going. I'm thinking, wow, that's pretty cool. Lucky I wasn't going Burko at the boys.
Kids, is that your local? It's like, get away from the creek.
I know, across the
road.
road.
In there, it'll be, that'll be me. If anyone ever sees me in a restaurant with my kids, I'd be like, Jack, Harry, don't, mate, stop banging.
I remember when I was travelling on the show, Andrea, because I was at the airport all the time, so my wife thinks it was a really great idea to come and meet me at the airport with the boys, and they were young. And I'm thinking, I've burnt so many husband points here because I've just been away constantly for the last 6 months. No way in my right mind will I say no, even though it's the last thing I want to do when I get off a plane after being in front of a camera for the whole week. All I want to do is get in the taxi, put my headphones on and just zombie out. Yeah. But anyway, Andrea comes up to the airport and we go to Nando's.
Oh.
Because I'm gluten intolerant. And I can only, there's only, so we go to Nando's and we can eat. And the kids are going nuts, right? And at this point in my mind, I'm going, this was not a good idea. Yeah, no. And so, as you know, as a father, you're about to... And then out of the corner of my eye, I can see this sort of, you just know someone's looking over in your direction. And I'm just about to sort of say, kids, eat the children. And then I look up and then they catch eye and they go, love the show. So they spotted me. They obviously love, they've got the Foxtel subscribers, but it's one of those times where you forget that... being in public sometimes isn't that straightforward these days. But anyway, first world problems. First world problems, exactly. So let's wrap it up. So I'm signing off. Yep. Macedonian. How do you offend a Macedonian in Melbourne? You just ask them if they're Greek. They go, no, mate, I'm Massa. Like, it's very clear they want to be completely separated from the Greeks, the Macedonians, whatever. So I'm going to this one's, I don't know whether I'm going to do this any good for the Macedonians, but, love you all. Love our multicultural society here in Melbourne. Dogladan.
Dogladen, is that how you say it?
What's the theory there? If you just keep on repeating it over, it'll
Well,
just click in the gear.
well, it's almost, sort of doing it, in that sort of Dogladen. Just trying to get it in the right accent. Who knows?
Oh, here's the deal. I don't know Macedonian, so that passes for me. That Dogladanya?
Dogladanya?
I reckon.
Oh, needs the E on the end. Dogladanya. Dogladanya.
So there you go.
There we go.
folks.
Sounds good.
Those of you who hung around for that, there you go. Dogladanya. For those of you who didn't hang around,
Yeah.
we'll catch up with you next week. See you, folks.